Hey, how's it going everybody out there? My name is Jakejames Lugo and welcome to the channel. So for this JJ on film, I've been waiting a long time to talk about this movie. The Street Fighter 2 animated movie. This is the definitive Street Fighter 2 movie according to a lot of people that are fans of the series. A lot of people still go back to this one when referencing any sort of adaptation of the Street Fighter story. The time frame where this story takes place is during the Street Fighter 2 era, so that includes Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, etc. All those characters that's part of that roster within those games are included in some fashion within this adaptation. Now, personally for me, after watching this film all these years later, I've seen this film so many times at this point, I can understand why a lot of people keep going back to this and saying that it's the definitive adaptation of Street Fighter in general compared to all other forms of media, all the manga, all the other stuff that's been put out there, the live action movie. People still consider this to be the absolute best. And I could totally understand why that is. All the characters that are included and featured within this animated film are given a lot of due. Like, they're given a lot of great stuff and cool moments. Even though not every character gets their time to shine and really dive deep into their backstory and stuff, there still is a lot of great moments, even for the ones that don't get a lot of screen time. The main focus on this entire animated movie is the fighting, of course, even though there is a subplot involving Shadow Lu, involving Ryu and Ken and their relationship, as well as also Chun-Li and Guile and all this other stuff that's going on. But still, primary focus of the entire movie is the fighting and showcasing these characters in the best light possible. Some of my favorite moments, which I think there's a lot of great moments in this animated film, include the very beginning, right before the credits show, is the fight between Sagat and Ryu, where we not only get to see how Sagat got his scar from Ryu's Shoryuken, but we also get to see a cool fight between Ryu and Fei Long. We get to see a short fight between Blanca and Zangief, as well as also the final battle, which happens towards the end with Bison, Ryu, Ken, Honda, Balrog. There's a big brawl that happens at the very end of the film. All these different moments I feel like have their own special charm to them, even though they still have a couple problems here and there with the overarching story. There's still a couple things that I feel like don't really hold up today. One of my biggest criticisms of the film as a whole is that some of the characters that I had thought would maybe influence the larger narrative in some sort of bigger way don't really get to do so. They only appear in some sort of like quote-unquote cameo type of way. Don't get me wrong, however, they do get their justice and they do have their little moments, which I think is great because there's so many characters within the Street Fighter 2 storyline that there's so much that you can only do within that given time limit. But even so, we still get to see them in some sort of way. But I was still hoping that they would be involved in some sort of way in a larger part with the ongoing battle with Shadow Lu or any of the other stuff that's happening within the movie. Some of the characters that fall into this category include Cammy, who we only get to see in the very beginning of the film and maybe one time afterwards, as well as also Zangief and Blanca, which we see a fight with them. DJ, who we hardly get to see much of, he only does like one thing in there. We also even get a brief cameo of Akuma, which I think it's kind of funny. It's kind of like a blink and you'll miss it type of moment, but even so, he becomes a larger part of the Street Fighter narrative in later games. But it's still nice to see him, but it would have been cool to see like him just like do something else besides just sitting around, you know what I mean? The thing about this is that there's so many fans of these characters, and this is why I always say that Street Fighter as a franchise as a whole does much better to have much more time given to it in like a series type of format, like a Netflix series or something, as opposed to just a 2-hour or even an hour-and-a-half movie. You have a much more time to tell not only more stories, but be able to focus on all these different characters and different aspects of the Street Fighter universe. Now, one more thing I want to bring up about this film is related to Chun-Li. We get a lot of Chun-Li in this film, and deservedly so. Chun-Li is the first lady of the fighting game genre, and so it's understandable she has to be a big part of this story. However, there are a couple moments where I feel like she could have done a little bit more, and she could have been more involved with some of the stuff, especially towards the climax of the film. Don't get me wrong, I am not complaining about Chun-Li whatsoever. I think she was done justice. We get a lot of great Chun-Li scenes, and plus also, we get the Chun-Li in the shower scene, so I cannot complain as a man here, and many other Chun-Li fans can't complain. I mean, she looked great in there. A lot of people are fans of her stuff, and again, I'm not getting into all of that. My point is, though, is that even though she's in the film a lot, I feel like she still should have been part of the final battle or the climax of everything that was happening. Maybe it was a product of the time, or maybe there were some other decisions that were made that had to get cut for time's sake or anything that was going on during the development of the film, but I would have loved to see Chun-Li actually have her arc, talking about Bison and getting revenge for her father against Bison and what he had did, in some sort of fashion towards the final battle, not just Ryu and Ken being the ones that are the saviors. Even though I understand that's supposed to be the main hero, that's supposed to be the main protagonist of the entire series, but it felt like some stuff was a little bit unresolved there. Granted, we also do have Guile, who's again a whole nother aspect and layer to all this stuff that's happening, but still, still, I felt like Guile, even though we didn't get much like backstory with him, we got some stuff, you know, involving Charlie and such, talked about in dialogue between him and Chun-Li, but it feels like he gets a little bit much more justice due for him than Chun-Li does, even though we see Chun-Li first in the film, and I think arguably she's in the film much more than Guile is. But going back to the way that the characters are presented in this film, I feel like the one that gets the best like presentation besides Ryu and like some of his cool moments and stuff is Bison. I feel like the way that they actually present Bison in some of the moments when we're first introduced to him, he looks like an absolute badass. I mean, seriously, when we first see him and he's actually walking through his base and we see Balrog, Sagat, and Vega with him and they're just walking and that dope music is playing in the background, there's just something amazing about that. They just look incredible in these scenes. Bison not only looks intimidating, but it also really kind of emphasizes, without him really doing much, how powerful and how much of an influence he has over everybody in the room. It's like everybody is scared of this guy and he's done nothing whatsoever. So when we finally do see him in the final battle against Ryu and Ken and Guile as well, he really looks like a badass. He's really like, all that buildup is really paying off for everybody at this point of the film. So my overall thoughts about the Street Fighter 2 animated movie, I think you guys should watch it, even if you're not a big Street Fighter fan. I think it not only kind of summarizes the story of Street Fighter 2 in a really interesting way, in a good way, you know, given the time that they're given here. However, also, for the hardcore fans, I still think this holds up. I still think it's the best adaptation, like you guys out there, of the Street Fighter 2 characters, or just the Street Fighter universe in general. I also do want to note that when you do see this film, make sure you see the English dubbing of it, the uncensored version, because not only does it have the best voices for all these characters, there's a couple big surprise celebrity voices in here for some of these characters, which I thought was crazy, but also the soundtrack overall, the music in the background, so much better than the Japanese dub. For whatever reason, the Japanese dub sounds a little bit more sillier. Maybe it's a product of like that early 90s anime stuff that they did with other series, and that worked for those types of like stories, but for whatever reason, the English version of this movie is leaps and bounds better than the Japanese. But those are just my opinions about the Street Fighter 2 animated movie. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments section down below. Tell me, are you a huge fan of the Street Fighter 2 animated movie? Do you think it sucks and I'm completely wrong? What are some of your favorite characters in this movie or just in the Street Fighter universe in general? It could be from any sort of the games or like any of the Versus series, whatever. Put all that stuff down below in the comments section. So as a quick side note, and in the spirit of brotherhood here on YouTube, I want to show some love over to the crew over at Game Over Jesse's YouTube channel. If you guys don't know who that is, Game Over Jesse and the crew over there are a bunch of people that get together and do a lot of great content related to Nintendo games, specifically about The Legend of Zelda. So we decided to do a cool cross promotion between the two of us, so I wanted to show some love and show you guys a little bit about what they do on their channel. They're constantly putting up great and insightful videos related to The Legend of Zelda and other Nintendo franchises as well. They do a lot of great content related to all these different types of games, including top 5s, other analysis videos, reviews, let's plays, podcast discussions, and so much more that I know that a lot of you Nintendo fans out there are really going to get a kick out of. Even though they do a lot of great content in all these different franchises, their forte is definitely The Legend of Zelda. One of their most recent videos was about the top 5 mysteries in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time that really explore some of the more unanswered questions and bigger discussions about Ocarina of Time that hardcore Zelda fans have constantly brought up. I highly suggest that you guys check them out, give them a subscribe, check out their latest video, it will be linked in the description box down below, and show them some love, send them some owl hugs from me if you can. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. Make sure you guys check out some of these other videos in the boxes after the credits, and don't forget to visit my Patreon page via the annotations for more exclusive content. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Peace out, and stay epic, everybody.